Okay, so again, we're making two groups of two, like so. So now what we're going to do is we're going to factor each of those two groups individually. So for the first one here, well, sorry, wrong button. For this group here, right? Okay. 5 is a factor of 10, right? Excuse me, I got ahead of myself. The smallest exponent of x is 1, right? You know, this is x to the first. The exponent is 1. We don't write it. Okay, so we take m to be 1. This is what I was trying to say before on the previous slide with b times x to the m here. This one. That's what I was trying to say here. All right. Now I was saying b is this, m is this. This is what I was referring to because the GCF we said was of the form b times x to the m. So anyway, here we get m is 1. M is the smallest exponent of x. B is 5, since 5 is a factor of 10. I mean, if you were to list the factors of 5 and 10, you would see that the greatest common factor is 5. So B is 5. And we get 5 times x is the GCF. What do we do next? We factor it out. And this is how we factor it out, right? You put the wonderful thing in front and then you divide, right? You divide because you have to see what's left over. It's just like with factoring integers. But when you divide into each term. You don't divide into the first term only. You divide into each term, like so. You know, again, I told you this. I've seen students in the past, they would just do 5x squared over 5x, and 10x they would leave alone, which is not right. So when we do this, we get 5x, we have this quotient and this quotient. From here, let me actually draw it in. What's going to happen? Well, the 5s are going to cancel, right? X squared over x is just x. Here, the x's here cancel. We have 10 over 5, which is 2. So what do we get? We get 5x times x plus 2. Okay, that's awesome. That's fun. Now, since x plus 2 is the polynomial left over, that tells us right away that the GCF of x plus 2 has to be 1. Remember, if you factor out the GCF, what's left over has a GCF of 1. I mean, you could also argue this way, as I did over here, that this has a coefficient of 1 and a non-zero constant. That is, let me say it this way, as I have on the slide. The smallest exponent of x is 0, because again, there's a non-zero constant. 1 being a coefficient, the only common factors then of the coefficient and the constant term, the only common factors of 1 and 2 is 1. So we get b is 1, m is 0, we get the GCF is 1. So you could argue just by looking at it like I just did, or you can say, well, this is what's left over when we factored out the GCF from here. So this also has GCF 1. All right. Then, sorry, I got ahead of myself. So once we have this as well, its GCF is 1, as I just said, right? 5x squared plus 10x, we replace it by this, because that's what we got over here, right? 5x squared plus 10x is 5x times x plus 2, right? So I replaced it. Now we factor out x plus 2, pull it out in front, and what's left over? I mean, I did show more calculations last time, and you'll see more of them shortly. But here, even visually, you can see when you pull it out in front, what's left over? The 5x is left over here. X plus 2 is pulled out, and it looks like there's nothing left, but we have to put a 1 there. I mean, what's really happening is we're dividing, but again, I think a bunch of people were confused when I had all the calculations. So here I'm showing less calculations. And when you pull out x plus 2, 5x is left over here. We're pulling out everything here, so we're left with 1. And we get this. So altogether, this here has been factored this way. Now, I know there's also some students who like to see all the calculations. At least in the past, I've had students like that. So I did add all the calculations here. So basically, this part here is filling in the gap, so to say, of what's over here. So I'm showing all the calculations. This is basically how we factor out x plus 2. So this is basically filling in the missing details of how I went from here to here. Right? You want to factor out x plus 2. And when you factor it out, you're dividing, which means you're dividing into each term here. Right? And when you divide into each term, here the terms cancel. The x plus 2 does. That's where the 5x came in. Here, when you divide x plus 2 into itself, what you're left with is 1. They cancel. You get 1. You know, anything divided by itself is 1. So that's how we get this. Okay, that was fun. What questions do you have about this? We'll do more examples, don't worry. I mean, if we have to spend the entire week on this, that's fine. I have no problem with that, because I know this is not easy. But what questions do you have on this? Again, I added in more calculations here because I've had students in the past who like to see all the calculations, and a lot of students also don't. So I was trying to fill in as many, I was trying to make as many people understand as possible. Yeah?
When it comes to like the tests and stuff and showing our work, do we have to show all of the calculations that like you would show on the slides?
No.
Okay.
If you show this part here, this would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. I'm glad someone asked that. Okay. Again, I just like to put as many calculations as I can so everyone understands. But on a test, even if it's take home, I understand, you know, this stuff's not easy. So this really here, from here to here, this step, at this step that is, this stuff showing this would be fine. You know, but the previous stuff, of course, you want to show some work so that I know that you know what you're doing. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Any other questions? Well, that was so much fun. Let's do another one. So I figured I do this one, then I do another one, and then I'll let everyone try one. I know these are long, so I understand. But let's do this one together. You know, I did email everyone the notes as well. So again, let's get the GCF. And again, as we have seen before, since we have a coefficient of 1, that tells us the greatest common factor among the coefficients and the constant term has to be 1. So that B is 1. Let me actually write that out. That might help. So that B in the GCF is 1. Now, since there's a non-zero constant term, right, that means the smallest exponent of x is 0. So the GCF then is going to be b, right? X to the m. Oh boy. And this is equal to 1. I mean, I guess technically we have x to the 0 here, but it's not really precise to say that, but we just say 1. I'm just saying x to the 0, we're treating like 1, just to help us remember this case. Okay. Now, so we got our GCF as 1. Okay, so just like before, ax squared plus bx plus c, that's what we're dealing with here, which is 6x squared plus x minus 7. So a, let me draw this, and this might help. So we know that a is 6, b, now it looks like there's no coefficient here for b, right? We take b to be 1. Remember, if the coefficient is 1, we don't write it. So b here is 1.